Gentlemen, distinguished audience, welcome to the last working session of this Congress. It's about how can news agencies support the newspaper's future needs. My name is Peter Kropsch. I am the CEO of the Austrian News Agency, and I'm currently the president of the Alliance of European News Agencies. And first of all, I want to join the preceding speakers saying thank you for the perfect conduct of this conference by the Saudi press agency. Thank you to the president of the agency, and thank you to all of his team who did so excellently care of us and made sure that we get not lost. A few things you might notice that we have lost some of our speakers. Whole Latin America is not present here. I hope this is not a kind of a symbol of the branch now. Yeah, but anyway, we will make it, because here I have great panelists here, and they are from the States. They are here from Saudi Arabia. They are from the UK, and what unifies them is the fact that they are representing our biggest clients for the last 100 years, the newspapers, and so we have a mixed session. We have some presentations, we have some slide presentations, but I want to give you the opportunity, maybe that you have missed in the morning, also to ask some questions. So I asked my panelists to limit their presentations to 10, 12, 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes. So let's go on. So I wrote to my panelists a list of questions beforehand, and the first question was how to begin with a status quo. What kind of news agencies are in use in your organizations? What news agencies do you use? For what purpose? And then I asked this genie out of the bottle question, because when a genie comes out of the bottle, you get 3 wishes free. And I asked them, when you had 3 wishes free to your news agencies, what would you like from them? So I introduced my panelists just along with the statements, and I'd like to start with Dewan Maharaj. Dewan comes from the LA Times. The LA Times is the biggest newspaper, or the biggest news provider in the west of the States, and he's the editor-in-chief. Dewan, I did some research, and Dewan is an award-winning journalist, and he wrote a series, and he got an award from that, and the title of the series is Living on Pennies, and I hope he did it not for the state of the news agencies. So Dewan, may I ask you to start, please?
Thank you, Peter. First, I want to thank our generous and gracious Saudi hosts, the Saudi Press Agency, and the organizers of this Congress for putting on such an impressive event. I know the subject up for debate is how to craft a news agency for the digital age. But before we delve into that, I want you to ponder a different question. What would the world be like without news agencies? It was a question asked by many newsrooms in the United States, including my own, as the revenue model for newspapers came under increasing pressure. We went one step further. We wanted to envision that world. So for several weeks, we decided to experiment and publish without using dispatches from news agencies. I bet you can predict the result. Journalists will tell you that when they signed up for their jobs, they took an unspoken vow to uncover the truth and to serve readers to the best of their abilities. In the same vein, leaders of the most hyper-local newsroom would acknowledge that on many days, the most viscerally interesting story for their local readers might not be the local crime report or an action at City Hall, but what's happening in Egypt, Syria, or the Philippines. This is especially true for an international city like Los Angeles, which has the largest populations of Koreans outside Korea, Armenians outside their homeland, the largest populations of Iranians outside Iran, largest population of Mexicans outside Mexico, Salvadorans outside El Salvador, and so on and so on. At the end of our experiment, we decided that we simply could not serve our readers well without using dispatches from news agencies. Let's face it, no legacy print newsroom has the worldwide reach of an Associated Press, Reuters, AFP, or AFE for that matter. To give readers a full picture of what their world looks like, you need news agencies. And of course, news agencies have to adapt to the new world. And that's what we are here to talk about this week. In one of the panels yesterday, Gary Pruitt spoke eloquently about the state of the business. He said, and hat tip to Eric Carving for this tweet, which I plucked just before the presentation. The tweet said, "The biggest AP customers have had to cut back and need us more than ever, but can afford us less than ever." That was certainly true at the LA Times. Let me back up a little. In an earlier era when revenue was just rolling in, we could afford to buy almost every news service and still not use it. Every page of the Los Angeles Times was written and produced by the 1,100 plus writers and editors at the LA Times. In those days, the LA Times was so heavy that the paper was famously sued by the star of a television show because she said the newspaper delivery person killed her small dog when he threw the paper over the fence. It was not only heavy, it was lethal. Talk about hard news. You couldn't blame the news agencies for that, simply because we used them only for briefs. I remember one of my predecessors setting a limit to the length of a news agency story printed in the newspaper. The web, our broken revenue model, and the need to set priorities, to make tough choices, changed all that. For the first time, we had to be selective about how many news agencies we could afford. And we had to clarify our mission about how we could best serve our readers. Don't get me wrong, that exercise did not result in a scaling back of the LA Times' ambitions. As a matter of fact, we are still proud of our robust national staff, our Washington bureau, and our foreign staff. During the past 2 years, 2 LA Times correspondents have been devoted solely to covering the Syrian conflict. At least 2 full-time correspondents have been documenting the Mexican drug war at our doorsteps for 5 years running. The same goes for the rise of China and that story, which really is a local story in California. But as resources have gotten more precious, we've had to ask ourselves, how can we best serve our readers? What could we be great at? And what could we do better than anyone else? The answer was staring us in the face. We had the largest newsroom in the Western United States, and we had the good fortune of living in what is known as the Golden State, a place with one of the biggest economies in the world, a place which, thanks to Hollywood, daily influences popular culture around the globe, for better or for worse, a place so rich in diversity that a young bodybuilder from Peter's country, Austria, could go on to become a 2-term governor. A place so filled with creativity that over the last 2 decades it has given the world innovations, including Google, Facebook, and Twitter. Taking stock of the conditions and our assets, we decided to replant our flag there. And we decided, first and foremost, we would continue to place the highest emphasis on accountability or watchdog journalism, holding officials accountable when they abused power and when they abused their positions. Our investigation into the finances a few years ago of a small southeast Los Angeles city named Bell paid off handsomely. Our reporters found out that the city manager was paying himself $1.5 million in salary and benefits. The deputy city manager was making more than $500,000, and the police chief was making more than $400,000, far more than the police chief in New York. New York is a city with millions of people. Bell is a city with 35,000, mostly working-class immigrants. The story caught fire at a time when regular Americans and others around the world were struggling to make ends meet. Thanks to the story, Bell became an answer on the television show Jeopardy! The paper won the Pulitzer Prize for Public Service, and our reporters were invited as far away as Ukraine, and that's far for us, to tell their colleagues how they reported the story. I tell this story because in a way, it illustrates the tough choices we've made, but it also illustrates how we now use the news agencies. Here's how. At any given time, we had at least a dozen reporters on the Bell story. If something happened on their beat, we were more than willing and prepared to publish the story from the news agency. We no longer felt we needed to produce and write everything that went into the paper. Peter has asked us to specifically address how we use the news agencies, and in preparation for this meeting, I asked some leaders of the various sections at the LA Times to tell me how their departments have changed. The obituary editor informed me that this year we've published more than 185 obits with staff and wires byline. At least some portions of those stories included wire material, the vast majority provided by AP. They include stories that broke late in the day when we had to respond to news but didn't have time for a staff writer to start from scratch or when a reporter was not available. While we continue to assign our staff to the most important stories, the AP is a vital source for figures still important to our coverage. They cover and have files on more newsmakers than anyone we know. We don't have the manpower either in the obits department or in the staff as a whole to duplicate what AP provides. And they give us something that is vital for the web, speed in filing. Yes, 5 years ago, we would have written every single one of those obits from scratch. For the online world, we also use AP as an early warning system. With 500 plus reporters in the newsroom, we can still cover world, national, California, and other places. But when something happens, we decide whether to post wire on the web or to assign the story. If the story is big enough, we'll post wire immediately and then determine how we are going to cover it. We also use AP for photos and video. This may be the most important use. We publish 200 to 300 stories a day and try to have photos with each story. Like I said, for this, AP is very valuable for us. The same with video. The more video we have, the better. So if there's an appropriate video from AP, we'll use it. I welcome Gary's announcement yesterday that the agency was pushing even more into video. AP has a great record with confirmations as well. So we try to confirm a story ourselves, but having that other confirmation moves the ball into safe territory. I can't tell you how many times I've asked the obituary editor, what does AP say? You can bet that if AP reports that someone has died, that person will never be resurrected. Peter has asked us to address this question. If we had 3 wishes, what would news agencies do for you in 3 years' time? I think you heard from Eric Carvin yesterday that AP is already trying to do it, but I would fast-track the process of validating user-generated material. That is for AP and other news agencies to become the authority on certain big breaking news, especially in an era where pranks, rumors, and simply sloppy reporting seep into the early reports of even credible news outlets. News agencies have to improve in social media. I'm not the only one, as you can tell, who said that this week. They have to hire the best social media minds out there and have them act as the first responders. A few more Eric Carvins. A SWAT team of first responders who would get the user-generated content more quickly. Photos, videos, quotes. For example, the plane crash in San Francisco last July. Twitter, or people on Twitter beat everyone. It beat us, it beat the wires, it beat the cable news networks, everyone. Photos and videos from the crash surfaced on Twitter first. Same with the LAX shooting. Twitter had the information first. We know what happened from the Boston bombing that many respected news organizations can get it wrong. So the value of a news agency is gathering the information quickly and then being able to confirm the initial story and providing more details, just like they do in obits and politics. We still maintain our own news judgment, but readers are also telling us what they're interested in reading daily. News agencies have to be more adept in the social media world. They need to be constantly watching Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Instagram 24/7 and producing stories out of them. I'll give my list of wishes before I cede the ground to my colleagues. So other wishes, anything involving the use of interactive graphics, multimedia, and intelligence. The news services are on the ground and can do the kind of in-depth stuff involving population, attitudes, economics, ideologies that outsiders will never have the time to do on their own. Every agency should be asking, how can we create the kind of multi-platform, exciting content that will work on websites for a long period of time and can never be developed by anyone besides a well-established local resident with an insider's vision and an outsider's desire to explain. More profiles. Most outsiders have no idea who is who. Those profiles are a vehicle to explain issues in something other than a dry, pedantic way. And we need explainers. What the web has done is helped to elevate a different form of storytelling, the explainer in real time. Readers want to know how and why in real time. Give me a bio on a newsmaker in real time. Readers are telling us, make me smarter. In this age of what I often call personal and participatory media, it's okay, actually recommended, to answer readers' question in real time. I have other wishes. You told me 3, that was 4, but my other colleagues have their own, so I'll cede the floor to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawan, for your 3 wishes. The 4th was for Eric Carvin about his reproduction strategy, I got. So, there was a lot about social media, and in our short talk before the meeting, Saud Al-Rayes, you're the managing editor from Al-Hayat, big pan-Arabian newspaper, just flew in for that event. Okay. Yeah. We had a short chat about accuracy and about confirmation of social media, and so I asked him the same questions, and I'm very eager to hear what your thoughts are about that.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and I speak in Arabic if you don't mind. طبعا أنا ما حسوق صحيفتي إذا كنتم منتظرين هذا. اللي يبي يعرف الجريدة اللي أنا أشتغل فيها يدفع ريالين ويشتريها. فاللي ولا حسوق طبيعة الأحوال وكالات الأنباء ولا حعلمهم إيش هم شغلهم إيش يعنون للصحف. لكن أنا هنا تحديداً عشان أقدم احتياجات الصحف لوكالة الأنباء. ما يخفى عليكم طبعاً الصحافة الورقية والوسائل الإعلامية المختلفة تمر بمرحلة انتقالية بدأت التقنية تلعب فيها دورا لافتا، فضلا عن التداخل في استخدام الوسائل التكنولوجية على الصعيد الإعلامية كافة. وهناك تصورات مختلفة الحقيقة لدى محللي ومنظري المشهد الإعلامي. بعضهم يرى أن الصحف إلى زوال، والبعض الآخر لا زال يتمسك بالصحف، وهذا الحديث الحقيقة لا زال محل جدال، وهناك مؤشرات لكنها متباينة. طبعا أنا أتحدث من هنا التأكيد على أن العمل الصحفي بشكل عام تأثر بمجمله بالمعطيات الجديدة، وتغيرت بنيته الأساسية على الرغم من محافظته على الشكل الأساسي، ما أدى إلى تغيير بعض آليات العمل لكل وسيلة على حدة، وبالتالي أصبح هناك تغيير في احتياجاته وطرق تعامله مع مصادر الأخبار، ومن بينها بالطبع محور حديثنا اليوم هو وكالات الأنباء. الصحف في ظل التدفق الإخباري الكبير بحاجة إلى الوصول الفوري إلى المتلقي. اليوم المتلقي لم يعد هو القارئ، المتلقي هو قد يتلقى بهاتفه النقال بجهازه اللوحي، فأصبح أكثر اتصالاً بالمعلومة من السابق، وبالتالي هناك ميل صحفي عام إلى الأخذ باتجاهين أساسيين في العمل من أجل تحقيق النجاح: الحصول على مواد صحفية ذات خصوصية. الصحف بطبيعتها تبحث عن التميز، قد نشاهد خبر في أكثر من صحيفة، كل صحيفة تتناوله من زاوية مختلفة عن الأخرى، هذا ما يميز الصحف. لكن ما لم تكن هناك معلومة أكثر دقة ستصبح مجرد قطعة إنشائية لن تقدم الكثير. بجانب هذا هناك التغطية الموسعة لمواضيع أو أحداث قد تقع في منطقة جغرافية أو في حدود معينة. ومن الواضح أنه الاتجاهين اللي ذكرناهم وكالات الأنباء ما تقدم هذا بالصحف. هناك أمر لا يقل أهمية وهو المصداقية وجودة المحتوى. هنا لابد من الإشارة أن بعض وكالات الأنباء باتت تلجأ لمواقع التواصل الاجتماعي والمنتديات لاستقاء أخبارها، وأنا أعتبرها شخصياً إحدى أكبر الكوارث. ومن المؤسف أن تلك الوكالات تعد من الوكالات ذات التاريخ العريق، وهنا مكمن الخطورة الحقيقة لأنها تحظى بمصداقية وبثقة الصحف. وأنا شخصياً تعرضت الحقيقة لأكثر من موقف. أذكر في إحدى المرات نشرنا خبر ورد عن وكالة أنباء شهيرة، واضطرينا تقريباً الساعة 12:30 وقفنا الطبعة، وتم حذف الخبر وإعادة الطبعة من جديد بعدما اتضح أن الخبر كان مصدره أحد المنتديات. طبعاً هذا يستحضر العودة الحقيقة إلى تقرير السيد شين ماكبرايد الذي كان يتحدث عن خطر التدفق الإخباري من الشمال إلى الجنوب، ومن استخدام الإعلام كأداة أيديولوجية واقتصادية. فكنموذج ذلك تخيلوا أن تأتيني تقرير من وكالة أنباء يتحدث عن حدث وقع في الشارع المجاور لمكتبي، ويقدم وصف ومشاهد طبعا لم تحصل. فليس من المنطقي أن يكون شخص مع صديقته في كافي شوب أو في بار ويكتب تقرير عن أزمة تعاني منها دولة، عثر على قصتها في تويتر أو في الفيسبوك. هذا الحقيقة أنا يطرح علي التساؤل: كيف يمكن أن أثق في وكالة الأنباء تلك التي تقدم معلومات نقلا عن مواقع التواصل الاجتماعي حتى وإن كانت وكالة أنباء عريقة؟ الآن لو اتجهنا الاحتياجات المستقبلية للصحف، احنا تكلمنا عن الاحتياجات الحالية الآن، لكن مستقبلا في ظل تطور التكنولوجي المتصاعد الصحف بطبيعة الحال لم تعد تقتصر على كونها ورقية فقط، بل تحولت إلى خلطة من الخدمات الصحفية على كافة المنصات الإعلامية، من مواقع التواصل، رسائل الجوال، رسائل حتى في البريد، بعض الصحف رساليات. فأنا أعتقد أن هناك حاجة متصاعدة إلى تغطية الجوانب التي لا يمكن أو لا تتمكن الصحف المحلية من الوفاء بها أو الاستثمار فيها بشكل كبير. نأخذ كمثال لا الحصر التقارير المرئية المصورة، وهي جزء من الخدمات الصحفية التي تقدمها الصحف على مواقعها. إذا تحدثنا عن الفجوة التي ستعانيها الصحف بين احتياجاتها الحالية والاحتياجات المستقبلية، قد يكون هناك بعض الاختلاف. الصحف بطبيعة الحال تحاول ملاحقة التطورات السريعة التي عصفت بالكثير من الأفكار والإنتاج الصحفي وأربكت مسيري الصحف الحقيقة وناشريها، فعصفت بمؤسسات وأسهمت في ارتقاء مؤسسات أخرى. بشكل عام من الواضح أن القدرات المالية للصحف في تراجع، وهذه أعتقد لمسها جميع العاملين في مجال الصحافة. هناك تسرب إعلاني متصاعد، هناك منافس خرج إلى الساحة، منافس إلكتروني، وهو ما سيؤدي لأن الصحف لن تكون قادرة على إنشاء معامل إخبارية بالشكل الكافي وإنتاج المواد الصحفية بأشكال تقنية مختلفة، فضلا عن حاجتها إلى الخصوصية ولو بشكل جزئي. فنعود هنا مرة أخرى إلى وكالات الأنباء التي هي محور حديثنا. كنت مع أحد الزملاء هو موجود معنا في القاعة هنا أتحدث عن وكالات الأنباء، فتبادر إلى ذهني على طول واس وهي وكالة الأنباء السعودية. طبعا غني عن التعريف أن هناك وكالات أنباء عادة الحكومية التي تمثل غالبا تتحدث بلسان الحكومة التي تعمل لها، هناك وكالات أنباء تجارية، وهناك مزودي الأخبار، وهو نوع جديد بدأ يحظى بقبول لدى الصحف، يقدم نوع من الأخبار الخاصة أو التغطيات حسب طلبات الصحف، وهذا نوع بدأ في العالم العربي على الأقل بدأ يحظى بنسبة نمو جيدة. الآن كيف تستطيع وكالة الأنباء دعم احتياجاتنا كصحف؟ أنا أعتقد أنه منذ تقرير مقرر في السبعينات والكل يدرك أن هناك خلل في التدفق الإخباري الإعلامي، تغير جزئيا لكنه لا يزال قائما بشكل بارز في ظل التواصل بوكالات الأنباء العالمية التي لا تتجاوز أصابع اليد الواحدة. في هذه الأزمة التي تحدثنا عنها سابقا بإمكان الوكالات تغيير سياساتها عبر اتباع وسائل جديدة تمنح الصحف بعضا من الخصوصية، على سبيل المثال تزويدها بمواد صحفية تحليلية وتقريرية وبيعها حصرا للصحف، وقد تكون تقع في مناطق جغرافية معينة أو تكون في نطاق تنافسي معين. ثانيا أعتقد أن على الوكالات تغطية الجوانب التي لن تستطيع الصحف الإيفاء بها مستقبلا، مثل الإنتاج الإخباري المرئي. أعتقد أن هناك حاجة الآن، الصحف ليس لديها القدرة على الاستثمار أو ضخ المزيد من الاستثمارات في هذا المجال، ولن تتمكن من السيطرة على الاتجاهين، فأجد وكالة الأنباء لديها القدرة على ذلك. الأمر الثالث، أتصور أن هناك في فجوة بين وكالات الأنباء والصحف، لا يوجد أي نوع من التواصل باستثناء ما يتم بثه من أخبار. أرى ضرورة أن يكون هناك تواصل مستمر مع الصحف للوقوف على احتياجاتها وعلى الخدمات التي ممكن أن تقدم لها. بالنسبة للوكالات الأنباء عندها فرصة ولديها فرصة كبيرة الحقيقة في استثمار السباق المحموم الذي استثمار السباق بين الإعلام التقليدي والإعلام الجديد. لازلنا نرى ضعف الحقيقة في حضور وكالات الأنباء في مواقع التواصل، على الرغم أنها باتت تشكل مصدرا في بعض الأحيان. يبقى سؤالان أخيران سأترك الإجابة عليه لكما. هل نحن في حاجة في الوقت الحالي لوكالات أنباء جديدة أم أننا في حاجة لتجديد وكالات الأنباء الموجودة لدينا؟ السؤال الثاني: ما الذي كان سيكتبه السيد ماكبرايد في تقريره لو كان بيننا اليوم؟ وهل كانت الولايات المتحدة وبريطانيا ستحتجان عليه مرة أخرى؟ شكرا لكم.
Thank you, Saud, and thank you for talking about the gaps that news agency could maybe fill and the need for the news agency to renew. It was kind of line extension of Nat Buran's saying in this morning, saying you have to develop from a service provider to a partner. And Nat Buran also said, your services are kind of an insurance policy for us, along with the raw material that is coming. So I pass the word over to Ian Black. Ian Black is the Middle East editor of The Guardian. We all know The Guardian. The Guardian has made a tremendous development from a newspaper to today a worldwide digital news operation. Ian looks very young, but he is 30 years in the business, yeah, and he builds the bridge from the traditional values of journalism up to his Twitter account. So I'm following you now. Ian,
thank you.
Share your ideas with us.
Thank you, Peter. Well, I'll speak as the embodiment of modernity, despite my great age that Peter has alluded to. I'm really standing in for Alan Rusbridger, the editor of the Guardian. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you to the Saudi Press Agency for the tremendous hospitality. I thought I would focus on the role, as I've experienced it over many years, of the news agencies that we depend on in the past and going through into this period of tremendous change and transition that, of course, is the reason, I guess, that everybody is here today. This is a time of such extraordinary change that I myself find it sometimes quite hard to remember how things were. If I half close my eyes, I can still see in my mind's eye over 3 decades ago the reports of the news agencies that we subscribed to at The Guardian arriving on our office desks in wire trays, torn off long rolls of paper that were supposed to be taken off the telex machine, another reminder of the past. And of course, if that wasn't done often enough, then the paper piled up, making a terrible mess on the floor. I wonder how many of you remember that. And I can also still, if I think about it, hear the bell that used to ring to announce the arrival of a snap, the first warning sign of a very important story, whether it was a domestic one from the Press Association, still the leading UK domestic news agency, or from an international one such as Reuters and AP or the others that we've used over the years. So I find it remarkable when so much of the way that we do our jobs has changed that this one very fundamental thing hasn't. We still rely very, very heavily on the work of the leading news agencies. We trust them. We assume that they're accurate and objective. We believe that they're fair. We also take for granted completely that they are fast, that they operate 24 hours a day, all year round. And obviously the very important fact that their product is now delivered digitally and silently on screens rather than on those old rolls of paper coming off the telex machine has not changed those very, very important basic assumptions that we make about primarily their reliability. And they remain extremely important, particularly in the area that I've been involved in for most of my career, in reporting international news. The Guardian of 2013 is no longer just a newspaper with a shrinking circulation, but a global news organization with an ever-expanding digital reach. I think I'm right that we currently have 80 million unique users a month of our website, which makes us, I believe, the second largest online newspaper, forgive the apparent contradiction between the two terms, in the world. We have correspondents certainly in every continent, but of course not in every country. if we want to know what's happening in Paraguay or in Qatar or in Canada or in Estonia or in Sri Lanka, we still rely fundamentally on the news agencies to tell us. And to give a recent example, the mass killing that everybody remembers in Norway last year was reported first by news agencies, a local Norwegian news agency, then international agencies. And once the scale and the horror and the global echo of that story became clear, we, of course, moved as quickly as we could to deploy our own correspondence. But the news agency was in the front line, and it was the news agency which broke the story. And of course, this isn't just about remote or isolated places or small countries. Even in large countries where we do have correspondence, we follow the wire reports to tell us in advance what the major stories of the day are going to be, not just the curiosities, not the man bites dog stories that we all still like to read. So that routine ability of the agencies to report quickly and succinctly helps us set the agenda still in our newsrooms. They help us plan, they help us avoid surprises, mistakes, and of course, you know, correspondents are strong-minded people. They know what they're doing, they like to be master of their subject, but they need to be very careful if they dismiss a story that the news agencies are reporting. Of course, you can always argue with how a news agency is presenting or interpreting a story, but in my experience, it's very unusual to be able to fault their basic judgment. That is the level of reliance that I think we have on them. And to be honest, I think it's fair to say that news organizations like ours can sometimes be a little bit patronizing, a little bit condescending about the work done by the news agencies. And if you were to put a little bit of psychology into the equation, you might say that's precisely because we do rely on them so very much. News agencies don't place a very high value on fancy writing or on color designed to conjure up atmosphere, but they do stick to the basics and without frills. And The Guardian, of course, like all other major news organizations, has its own style and brand and expectations and self-image. But I think if we're being candid, we should appreciate the invariably solid and dependable work that's done by the news agencies. I asked one of my own editorial colleagues about this point, and he said, the way I use the news agency now, I really don't want them to provide any fine writing or color. I'm using them as building blocks, and I would prefer them to play it all as straight as possible, print quotations in full with as little paraphrasing as possible, and to carry on doing the things that they are best at, providing a line or paragraph of accurate context. Of course, another way in which the agencies, from our perspective, play I think, a uniquely helpful role is the way they report on complex international political and economic stories in particular, where there are many different actors involved. My own knowledge of this relates to, over the years, reporting from places like the United Nations, the European Union, the Arab League, all large multilateral fora. Now, one or two journalists representing their news organization are simply incapable of covering all the participants, let alone go to all the briefings and press conferences at a major summit or international event of that kind. You just cannot do it. So it takes the manpower, the expertise, the contacts, resources, and particularly those collaborative habits, I would say, of a major international news agency to do that. And I think it shows in the generally very high standard of the coverage. I would say, there's entirely a personal note, that Reuters, obviously one of the leading players in this field, has in recent years, somebody will perhaps tell me precisely when that was, has started doing long and very well-edited investigative reports, bringing together the resources of multiple journalists. I remember, for example, a very fine one that they produced in 2011 after the fall of Tripoli to the Libyan rebels who overthrew Muammar Gaddafi. That was a fantastic piece of work. There's been a wonderful, much praised series, again by Reuters, on the financial resources of Iran's supreme leader. A very difficult, very opaque, complex, and inaccessible subject, which has really been done in a brilliant way. Those kind of pieces are really definitive. And I think, to be fair, they are the sort of work that any newspaper or other news organization would be very, very hard-pressed to emulate. So that's all good news, I think. That's all about trust and continuity in a relationship, in that relationship that we're talking about. The bad news, or the more complicated news, we all know what it is, and I think that's why you're all here today. We've heard a lot about this over the last couple of days, the changes we're living with. And again, from the perspective of my own digital news organization, I'm trying to stop using the word newspaper. The main challenge is that of what we've been talking about: citizen journalism, user-generated content, millions of tweets, Facebook pages, YouTube videos that are appearing faster than the output of even the fastest professional media outfits. I illustrate the point just a little by describing what we've been doing at The Guardian in recent years. We like to think that we pioneered, or were certainly there at the beginning, with the idea of the live blog, the rolling, continuously updated online report, never on paper, on a specific theme. It started with minute-by-minute reports of football matches, but it's become much more varied than that and much more ambitious. We, of course, did a lot on the recent terrible typhoon disaster in the Philippines, exactly the sort of story that lends itself to that kind of coverage. In 2012, there was a research project carried out that produced the finding that at The Guardian, guardian.co.uk, or theguardian.com, as we are now, a typical live blog would last for about 6 hours. It's updated 40 times, and has 2 authors, writers, contributors in the office, and maybe 1 or 2 other people out in the field reporting. What that means is that on average, each journalist involved has to research and write a new update every 20 minutes for 6 hours. Now, the live blog uses a wide range of reporting, including from news agencies, but here's, I think, an important point. The quantity of material we use from the agencies in this new and important format has been much outstripped by, guess what, by social media. The quality and the tone of social media is different. In some ways, of course, it's more intimate. We may, those of us who use Twitter and other social media, have a sense of almost of intimacy, of personal connection with an individual because they are familiar to us and we have experienced them and deem them to be reliable. It's a bit like hearing a story or a recommendation of a film or a restaurant from a friend we trust. But of course, when we report on the basis of what's being said on social media, and there's been a lot of discussion, and there will be doubtless a lot more about reliability and verification and so on, it doesn't have necessarily the accuracy of what we've come to expect from the agencies. Speed, yes, but accuracy can't be taken for granted. This mosaic approach has proved particularly successful in the period of the Arab uprisings, from Tunisia 3 years ago through Tahrir Square in Cairo, video clips, audio files, Skype interviews, graphics, all an important part of this hybrid medium. We've seen them particularly heavily used, of course. The Arab colleagues will know this, especially from the terrible conflict in Syria. We've also seen a complication, a new complexity with the use of social media in that conflict, not only by individuals, political groups, but by a government too. We've seen social media become a battlefield in which the propaganda war is being fought by both sides, and that can make it very difficult to sort out truth from reality. Think of the older conflict of Palestine and Israel, where today part of the conflict is fought out between the armed wing of Hamas, the Palestinian group in Gaza, and the Israeli army on the other hand. That clearly requires great care and poses very difficult problems of verification. And I think that all reminds us that we mustn't forget the trust that we still place in the news agencies in this hyper-abundant world of the media. And that is a reputation that is clearly worth holding on to. I know that some of the agencies, and I think there's been some discussion of this, have looked into the live blog format and considered providing, perhaps some are that I don't know of, providing those kind of services to their own clients. And of course, they have the habit of speed and accuracy. But I think that from the perspective of an organization like ours, we wonder whether they could manage the more informal tone, and the other aspects of the live blog, there are the idiosyncratic, there are the special aspects of a live blog that we at The Guardian and others have pioneered. And the colleague who I quoted earlier, who has done much work in this area, had this to say: part of the appeal of a live blog lies in the audible tone or voice of the author. It has to be a Guardian tone of voice for The Guardian. And I couldn't imagine, as he said, taking wholesale a live blog produced by the AP, Reuters, or PA. The readers like to feel that they can communicate with each other, that he or she is on the other side of the screen reading their comments, and they wouldn't get that feeling, I believe, with a syndicated agency blog. On some of the future issues, and this goes, I'll address briefly the questions, Peter, that you've posed here. I mean, this is not my own area of responsibility at The Guardian, but I've talked to colleagues who deal in this, and they point to areas of concern about this evolving relationship that we're all looking at between organizations like ours and the agencies. And of course, the agencies provide a breadth of coverage based on economies of scale that mean that we can afford to offer much, much more to our readers than we could do without those resources. And that's becoming particularly important at a time when our own internal resources are shrinking as we cope with current challenges, budgetary restraints. The ability of the agencies to invest in telling stories across multiple formats is enormously attractive to us. We're very, very hungry for video in particular. The video means that we, from our headquarters in London and our offices now also in New York and in Australia, we can be on the ground, as it were, virtually anywhere in the world, however widespread or unpredictable the news agenda is. And so the new delivery technologies that the agencies are looking at all are very important in terms of our content. There are specialized areas too that are extremely important to us. Data services for finance pages, post-match sports data, and a range of hosted technology solutions, websites and apps used, for example, for the Tour de France or for the Olympics coverage are very, very important to us. We are currently spending about 7% of our entire editorial budget on news agencies. We expect it to remain within that region, rising to a maximum perhaps of 10% over the next 3 years or so. We're concerned about greater flexibility of packaging of certain products and live streaming, for example. I'm told that what we buy is on a subscription basis. From the Reuters material that we use, we're only able to actually use about 5%. And we're clearly interested in more flexible models in the context of budgetary pressure. On the three magic questions, very briefly, and I'll end with that, I've jotted down very much as headings. I've touched on some of them. We may expand on them perhaps in discussion. First and foremost, what I began with, that reliability, the trust that I think remains undimmed over all the years, the breadth of coverage that the agencies are able to offer, the flexibility of packaging that I've just referred to. And I would add a fourth that has just occurred to me actually in this context, and taken my own professional background and current job. I'm not sure whether this exists, but I know my own experience writing about the Middle East, an important part of the world. There are others that packages of translated material that can give insight into the particularities of a different culture from our own, whether it's mainstream media or other things, I think would be valuable and would be of interest to news organizations like ours across the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you for sharing us your ideas and enhancing the traditional idea of the news agency by elements like live and video, and I like this expression of the building blocks especially. Now we come to Alan Marshall. Alan Marshall is from the PA. The PA is a news agency and I like this idea to bring together the demand and the suppliers, or the partners maybe. So you have a lot of suppliers, a lot of potential partners here. And one of them is Alan with PA. PA is the British news agency, one of the most competitive agency markets in the world, I would say. And Alan, if you open his profile on LinkedIn, it says you are passionate about all things digital. Yeah, and Alan brought with him an idea about how the PA in their innovation will tackle that idea of supporting their media clients in their work. And what I do now is what the Brits with their unparalleled humor would call an hospital pass. That means I give him the duty to perform something very difficult, yeah, in front of your customers with your new ideas. But at least 10% of all those receivers of hospital passes, they prevail. So, Alan.
Thank you, Peter. Peter had warned me it might be a rough ride this afternoon, representing the agencies with agency customers, but I'll do my best to describe how we at PA are trying very hard to make ourselves stay relevant. Just before I begin the presentation, just let me also convey my thanks to our hosts and the Saudi Press Agency for hosting this excellent Congress, and also to the great team who've made us feel very welcome and made everything run so smoothly. So newspapers are a crucial part of PA's landscape as customers, shareholders and founders. And they're valued, let me just plug this in. There we go. Yes, they're a valued and vital part of our heritage. So I just wanted to start by drawing a very quick comparison with the past. And this is a page from the Daily Mail in 1926, April 1926. It's worth noting that it's not the front page, but it does contain the breaking news from the Press Association of the birth of a royal baby, an heir to the throne. And it says the Press Association is officially informed that Her Royal Highness the Duchess of York was safely delivered of a princess at 2:40 this morning, and that's a daughter who would, some years later, be crowned Queen Elizabeth II. And fast forward 87 years, and we have the birth this year of Prince George of Cambridge, a future king. And PA is still working very hard, striving to bring this breaking news to our customers as quickly as possible. But some things have changed, and not content with a brief on the page 8 of the Daily Mail, this year we filed an awful lot more copy and pictures and video from that story. So it's certainly true that the core values and skills of a news agency still remain relevant. But they're also not enough. We need to develop new skills and services to help newspapers and other customers as they build their presence on the plethora of digital platforms. And it was quite reassuring to hear my fellow speakers very quickly talking about digital, even though the theme of this session was newspapers. I think it's reassuring and comforting that everybody actually sees newspapers and digital hand in hand, and as Ian put it, a hybrid media. And the examples here, just to show you some of our front pages that ran PA pictures of the royal baby. But it's more than just traditional services of words and pictures. For Prince George, we produced live streaming from outside the hospital. We produced a live blog, which actually ran not just in the UK, but in North America. And we also involved curation of social media and 360-degree images from outside the hospital. So we're trying to cover all the aspects of those stories, all the angles, and allowing customers, like Microsoft, which is represented by Darren yesterday, to build rich content experiences that can attract advertisers. So that's the background. So to meet those needs at PA, we have been rethinking our editorial strategy and focusing around 4 pillars: live, collated, archive, and bespoke. And there are supporting elements in there too which are crucial: planning, technology, and linked content. And by looking at our content operation in this simplified way, we're aiming to address and keep pace with the changing needs. And a crucial part of this is how we create content. And this year at PA, we've deployed a new editorial system. It's for all of PA's journalists, and it introduces 3 key changes. First of all, structured content. All of PA's wire and digital output is now created in detailed, structured templates. And this allows all of our content to be easily used across all platforms. And it also allows us, for the first time at PA, to preserve the hierarchy of stories and relationships between them in a technical format. So stories which have leads, sidebars, panels, profiles, and timelines, they can all be mapped out for customers in a structured way and just make them easy to unpack and use. We're also moving into linked pictures and video, and stories now have images and video directly related to them, and these links can be made visible to customers. And these assets are attached to stories by the news or sports desks, ensuring that our journalists are always thinking about stories from a multimedia and multi-platform perspective. And this is not just about improving digital products directly published by PA. It's also aimed at making life easier in newspaper newsrooms by making PA content more flexible and easier to use. And at a time when newsroom resources are stretched, we have to make it easy for customers to find the best and most relevant material at any time. The third key change is enhanced metadata, and we've heard that mentioned several times over the last 2 days. And as part of our new system project, we're integrating an advanced tagging tool so that all of our content can be published with very granular metadata. And using a set of semantic and database technologies, this system will automatically suggest tags around people, places, and organizations. And using a simple interface, which you see on the screen, PA journalists will validate these tags to ensure the quality is high. And all of the concepts are grounded in defined entities so that we can intelligently link text, images, video, and data content about a specific individual or organization. And I do have a demo of that, which I can share with you later on after the session. This is a working example of the output from that tool, which we used during the London 2012 Olympics. We provided our tagged sports wire to the London Organising Committee for use on the official website. And this allowed LOCOG to develop improved navigation on their site, allowing users to easily find news about specific athletes or countries, and driving users to related content with enriched user journeys. We will also offer enhanced search and filtering on content based on location, fantastic for a web user, but also great for newsrooms who want all the content related to their patch simply delivered to their desktop or mobile device. And the enhanced metadata will also add value to newspapers and other customers through an API delivery mechanism. So our News API is aimed at providing that increased flexibility that Ian was talking about just now for how customers can integrate PA content into their own newsroom systems, as well as directly query PA's content store to create and publish dynamic pages online and on mobile. Version 1 of the API will expose our core content set, news, sport, and showbiz, allowing newsrooms and customers to quickly filter and navigate PA's material. We'll also provide planning information around schedules, which are now created with a real-time approach as stories break, and we can connect related stories and multimedia assets. And version 2 of our News API will go further and open up PA's archive of content to customers. Previously, this has been an internal resource only, but the API allows us to unlock the value of that historic material, and will also integrate the enhanced metadata, which, for example, will allow specialist writers in newsrooms to quickly find the material that is so very relevant to them. If you can see this on the screen, this is the overall technical picture that we're building at PA. It's a common platform of structured, linked content and data, which can power a range of multi-platform products, as well as unlock those efficiencies in customers' newsrooms. And importantly for us, the News API will also power PA's own web portal, which has grown in importance as a way of our customers receiving content and interacting with the agency. Customers' systems are often not built with ingestion of agency content in mind, so a clear and user-friendly portal is an important tool for us helping customers get the best value from the agency content. And included in that, we're working on a mobile and tablet-friendly version of the portal to allow customers and reporters to stay connected with PA wherever they are. So to summarise, at PA, we see our mission to continue to create quality, trusted content and products, but do it in a way that allows flexible and efficient use across all platforms, whilst also improving the ways in which newspapers and media customers can receive, search and interact with PA content. And our ambition is to apply these principles to everything that we do to support newspapers and media customers as they manage the changes in their newsrooms and develop their brand in the digital world. Thank you, Peter.
Ellen, you bravely and brightly mastered the challenge. Thank you. And it was really good to see your vision how to bring traditional journalistic value with the help of technology and a lot of creativity into a new quality to support and partner with our customers. So, when customers and suppliers and partners are together in one room, I don't like to miss out the opportunity to ask you for some questions. Giulio. Is there a microphone for Giulio, or cry you as loud as you ever do? There is a microphone. Yeah. No.
Surely.
It's easier for the translator, you know.
Yeah, sure. Even for me, because, you know, at my old age, my voice is not the one I had before. So I have a question, actually, which is also a little bit of a provocation. And I address it to you all, but especially to Davan and to Ian, because it's related to the following. I mean, I'm an old-timer with news agencies, and I've been around for now more than 40 years in the field. And the recipe you are giving us is the same beautiful old recipe. Be quick, swift, reliable, complete, alert us on things, and then we will complete your job. I mean, when I began so many years ago, it was exactly the same. Of course, you are telling us, but do it with the new medias. Adapt yourself to a profoundly changed world. Perfect. I think you are right, and I thank you for what you are telling us, because indeed, and some of our news agencies have already begun, as Peter knows very well, to adapt to this new world and trying to sell this new way of making news agency journalists. But the great divide, to me, seems to be not in this different, which is the same old story perspective, but the great divide is a word that is seldom mentioned here. The word is an ancient word, it's called money. Money comes from, mainly in the media industry, mainly as far as news agencies are concerned, from two main sources: subscribers and especially state money, or in some cases a mix of subscribers and state money. Okay?
Giulio, your question.
It's coming. My question is only one word, but I will take my time to express my question. Now, in other media, the great divide is publicity, advertising. My question, here it is very simple, and it's a provocation. Would you trust, as editors, a news agency that carries also publicity, of course, separated from main stories? Already some of our news agencies are having small snippets of publicity in the videos. Would you trust a news agency that carries also advertising? Thank you.
Thank you, Giulio. Who wants to answer, Tavan or Ian?
Absolutely. I mean, if it's appropriately labeled or properly labeled, everyone's in the business, everyone's in competition for audience. Also, everyone is trying to figure out what the new model is, and everyone is trying to bring in money from different buckets. So if a news agency, under the rules, can bring in advertising that would support great journalism, I'm all for that.
Yeah, I would agree. I see no reason why, if a newspaper or any other news organization can do it, what is the problem with a news agency doing it, as long as the obvious divisions are observed between advertising and editorial, and anything that might be controversial, of course, would have to be subject to the same kind of special scrutiny that certainly takes place at The Guardian, and I'm sure it does at the LA Times and other news organizations. But I myself can't see any objection at all to that, no.
Thank you. Darren, your question?
I have a question and a favor to ask. My question is, would agencies forego a license fee and a subscription fee in exchange for revenue share based on clicks of their articles on our titles? Is that something agencies would consider? Because that's how we make money. And the second favor is, given the obvious challenges there are in paying fees to agencies in the future, I'd invite all agencies to approach me to talk about what ways can you help us achieve our common aims of delivering information. Are there other models we can explore together? Because if we simply don't have a big check to give you, we need the information, you've got the information, we've got to work together to solve that.
Darren, you want an agency guy answering that. Ellen, your second hospital pass.
You're mastering that language, Peter. Thanks, Darren. In terms of would agencies consider revenue share, I think not just PA, but more broadly across agencies, we are looking at diversifying business models, and we are looking at diversifying the sectors that we're in. So we're certainly not closed to working with different partners in different ways. Within PA, we already do work with some clients on a revenue share basis. It's not always the full rev share as in 100% of revenue. Often it's in addition to a sort of minimum revenue guarantee. So we are exploring those models, and I'm sure we'll continue to do that as different platforms come along. I think especially around things like video, where there's a clear monetization model for video. That's something we've explored most openly. But I'm sure that there are other opportunities that we'd be happy to sit down with people and discuss. And to your second question, I mean, again, I'm answering for PA, but I've seen this in other agencies as well. I think things work very well when we do embed ourselves, not necessarily physically, but in a relationship and a partnership with our customers, because we really start to understand your needs. And I think agencies are very creative, and when we do start to understand the problems in detail, we can start to help form solutions with you. So I think we're very, very keen to really get closer to our customers and partners. And, you know, many of us are passionate about great journalism and seeing great journalism continue and thrive. And in order to do that, we do have to work with people like yourselves to create those business models that will allow that to happen.
Thank you. So, in order not to harass the schedule, we can take one more question. Yes, please.
شكرا. I will speak in Arabic. جميع وسائل الإعلام حاليا هي بدأت بنفس وسائل نقل المعلومة، وفي هذه اللحظة جميعا نحن وصلنا إلى نفس التقنيات، سواء كنا صحف أو وكالات أو تلفزيون. لا توجد وكالة أنباء اليوم تشتغل بتقنيات من قبل 5 سنوات، فهي تتعامل بالتقنيات الموجودة حاليا. ولكن سؤالي، هل المهم بالنسبة للشخص المتعامل معنا أو الكاستمر، السرعة أو الدقة والشفافية. وهل هناك مؤسسة إعلامية أو وكالة أنباء تقدر أن توفر الاثنين معا؟ شكرا.
طبعا كصحف في الوقت الحاضر السرعة طبعا والدقة هم وجهين للعملة واحدة، ما نقدر نستغني عن أحد منهم، لكن لابد تكون هناك سرعة. الآن احنا نتكلم كصحف، الصحف تختلف عن التلفزيون. التلفزيون أنا أعتبره أكثر سطحية. التلفزيون صورة فقط وتعليق، إذا حدث أي حدث فهو يحتاج فقط إلى صورة وشخص يشرح إيش اللي حاصل. لكن الصحيفة تذهب أعمق من ذلك الحقيقة. فأن يأتيني خبر فقط أنه حدث، حتى يعني لن تجد وسيلة لكتابته، يعني لابد يكون في نوع من التفاصيل، لابد في استحضار على الأقل الكتابة على المناخ السائد في ذيك اللحظة. لابد أن تقدم وكالات الأنباء خدمتها بشكل متكامل. إذا حدث معين لا يمنع العودة وكتابة قصة كاملة. ما الذي يمنع الوكالات من كتابة قصة كاملة وتقديمها جاهزة للصحيفة؟ على الصحيفة أن تأخذ الآن وتقوم بعمل خلط ما بين خبر الوكالة وما هو موجود في أرشيفها. لكن المحصلة أنه السرعة طبعا مهمة جدا، والدقة لا شك ما تقدر الصحافة تستغني عنها. شكرا.
So, thank you. Laura, a question.
ألا تعتقد أن التطور التكنولوجي والإلكتروني يأخذ دور يعني يتراجع دور الصحف في هذا المجال؟ يعني وقت عم ينقل الخبر، وكالات الأنباء عم تنقل الخبر وبسرعة، صار الخبر إنه قديم لتاني نهار تالناس تقريب الجرايد. يعني ألا تعتبر مستقبلا أن الصحف الورقية إلى تراجع؟
أنا سؤال مهم.
نعم.
يعني احنا تكلمنا طبعا في البداية يمكن قبل لا تفضلي، لكن هو العموم الصحف الآن بدأت تتجه للديجيتال، وشاهدنا الحقيقة العديد من الصحف بدأت في هذا الاتجاه. طبعا إذا تمكنت الصحف من اختراق هذا المجال واتقانه فلن يعد هناك مجال حقيقة للمواقع التي تجتهد تقوم على 2 أو 3 أشخاص. الصحف لديها الإمكانات، التدريب، الإمكانات كاملة أمامها، من تدريب، من مصاريف، من تقنية قد لا تتوفر لأفراد. في العالم العربي أنا أتصور أنه الموضوع لا زال مبكر قليلا. هو في الاتجاه، نعم، الصحف بدأت تشعر بهذا الخطر فعلا، لذلك استدركت في عملية المواقع الإلكترونية لها، لكن لن يكون مثل ما يحدث في العالم الغربي. لا زالت العالم العربي بحاجة إلى فترة أكبر الحقيقة للتعامل مع التقنية، للتعامل مع الإنترنت، مع تويتر، مع الأشياء. أرجو أن جاوبت على سؤالك.
So just as a short answer to that, I think if you look at the front pages of newspapers, not only in Europe, but especially in the United States, they've changed dramatically over the last few years, simply because it's not enough to tell people what happened yesterday or who said what yesterday, but what is the context for it. So the Los Angeles Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the New York Times, they've all put like what we call value-added analysis on big stories. So it's no longer, you know, news about the event itself. And that the storytelling itself has changed, and the front pages have changed to be more differentiated.
Thank you. So, there is a saying that means you should stop when it's the most beautiful time, and that is now. Thank you for the lively discussion. Thank you to my panelists. Yeah, Farid tells me that I should tell you you should stay seated here. There will be a final statement after. After giving the document. Thank you. So just stay seated for a moment. I try to wrap up in a minute. So I think that the traditional virtues of the news agencies are not under any siege. So quality, accuracy, speed will be in place. But we see that we have to enhance that. Live, video, social media are new fields to master, and bringing in a new quality by using a lot of technology and interact with our customers to make them partners. Yeah. So thank you. A lot of work to do. We will see in Baku how we have succeeded. Thank you.
Ian, now your turn. Ian, and then go and sit with us. Yeah. أستاذ سعود. هلا والله. هلا بالحياة. Japan. Okay. And now for the chef. Now the final statement by Mr. Abdullah bin Fahd Al Hussein, President of Saudi News Agency. بالنص.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يسرني أن أتلو عليكم إعلان الرياض. إعلان الرياض تشكيل وكالة أنباء في القرن 21 والحفاظ على المهنية وعدم التحيز والموضوعية. في الفترة ما بين 17 و 21 نوفمبر 2013 انعقد بالمملكة العربية السعودية المؤتمر الدولي الرابع لوكالات الأنباء بحضور كبار القادة والمسؤولين عن وكالات الأنباء في العالم، بالإضافة إلى جمع من الإعلاميين والصحفيين المعنيين في هذا المجال. على مدى 4 أيام ألقى 30 متحدثاً يمثلون كبريات وكالات الأنباء والمنظمات الصحفية والقنوات الإخبارية مداخلاتهم التي تناولت كيفية إيجاد وكالة أنباء جديدة في القرن 21 تكون مهمتها الرئيسة الحصول ونقل الأخبار الموضوعية وغير المتحيزة وذات طابع مهني، وأن تعتمد على أحدث وسائل الاتصال التي تحصل بوتيرة سريعة في عالمنا الحالي. لقد بحث المؤتمر في كيفية تحسين قدرة الأعضاء في العمل كمنتجين رئيسيين للأخبار في العالم، الأساليب المفروض اتباعها لتعزيز نشر أخبار غير متحيزة، والعمل على دعم مبدأ حرية الصحافة ودعم وكالات الأنباء في معرفة كافة التطورات المهمة في مجال الميديا وحماية عمل وكالات الأنباء من القرصنة، وضرورة الاعتراف بالتنوع بين مختلف وكالات الأنباء، بالإضافة إلى ضرورة تأمين حماية الصحفيين العاملين في مناطق خطرة. لقد أشير في المداخلات التي ألقيت خلال الجلسات بأن سوق وكالات الأنباء تشهد انتقالات سريعة نحو الخبر المصور عبر الفيديو، إذ تستمع وتشاهد نسبة كبيرة من مشاهدي برامج الأنباء البرامج اليومية المعروضة بالصورة، ولا سيما الفورية والمختصرة منها. كما تشهد هذه السوق أيضاً استهلاك الأنباء عبر الهواتف النقالة المتحركة إلى الأمام وبسرعة، وكذلك التحول إلى الإنترنت ولا سيما الفيسبوك وتويتر وغيرها من المنابر. ولكن ومع كل ذلك فإن وكالات الأنباء تستطيع أن تشعر بالاطمئنان من واقع أنها تسلم الأنباء 24 ساعة في اليوم وفي الوقت الحقيقي، وأنها تملك المهارات والتجربة الكبيرة في هذه المجالات. وعلى الوكالات الأنباء أن تتبنى مبدأ الالتقاء، وأن تتوحد لمقاسمة المعلومات والممارسة الجيدة، وأن تظهر الخيال في ابتكار منتجات وأسواق جديدة. وفي وسط كل ذلك يجب أن تبقى وكالات الأنباء صادقة تجاه قيمها الأساسية في الدقة، عدم التحيز، العدالة والمصداقية. تناولت جلسات المؤتمر مسائل رئيسة تتعلق بصحافة ووكالات أنباء بشكل مباشر. ففي الجلسة الأولى نوقشت مواضيع تتعلق بتكييف قدرة وكالات الأنباء على العمل لإيجاد خدمات ومنتجات جديدة يمكن أن تنافس بها الوكالات أجهزة الإعلام الأخرى. وفي الجلسة الثانية التي كانت بعنوان وسائل الإعلام الاجتماعية وغيرها من المنابر الإخبارية الرقمية، تحدث عدد من ممثلي MSN وجوجل وهوفنتون بوست، حيث كانت مناسبة للاطلاع على المزيد من الابتكارات والمشاريع الكبرى التي تقوم بها هذه المنابر الجبارة، إذ ستكون نتيجتها في السنوات المقبلة توسيع مدارك المشاهدين ومتصفحي هذه المنابر. أبدى عدد من المسؤولين عن التلفزيونات رأيهم في البنود الإخبارية التي يتلقونها من وكالات الأنباء، وأكدوا على ضرورة أن تكون البنود الإخبارية موضوعية وحيادية وسريعة، سيما وأن عمل التلفزيون يحتاج إلى مثل هذه الشروط. وأفاد بعض المتحدثين أنه لا توجد منافسة بين الطرفين، بل أن أحدهما يكمل الآخر. وحول استغلال الفرص الجديدة أشير في الجلسة الرابعة إلى مواضيع حول كيفية إبقاء وكالات الأنباء في صدارة المؤسسات المنتجة للأخبار، مع التأكيد على الحيادية التي هي مدماك مهم في عمل تلك الوكالات. وناقشت الجلسة الخامسة مواضيع عالجت أسئلة مطروحة، ومنها كيف تستطيع وكالات الأنباء دعم الاحتياجات المستقبلية للصحف. وقد تحدث عدد من رؤساء التحرير من مناطق مختلفة من العالم، فأشاروا إلى أن الصحف مهما اعتمدت على نفسها فهي تبقى بحاجة إلى مواد وبنود إخبارية تصدرها وكالات الأنباء. إن المؤتمر الدولي لوكالات الأنباء ينادي وسائل الإعلام في العالم وبأشكالها المختلفة اعتماد المصداقية والنزاهة واللا تحيز عند نقل الأخبار والمعلومات، إذ بهذا السبيل نستطيع بناء عالم أفضل وإنسان أكثر سعادة. وكانت وكالة الأنباء السعودية قد وجهت الدعوة إلى 116 وكالة أنباء في العالم لحضور المؤتمر الرابع الذي تستضيفه، وقد تلقت موافقة 77 وكالة أنباء من القارات الخمس لحضور هذا الاجتماع الذي تشرفنا باستضافته ما بين 17 و 21 نوفمبر 2013. قدم أعضاء المؤتمر شكرهم البالغ وتقديرهم للمملكة العربية السعودية ممثلة بوكالة الأنباء السعودية على التنظيم والضيافة العربية المعروفة التي لقيها أعضاء المؤتمر طوال فترة وجودهم في الرياض. هذا وقد وافق أعضاء المؤتمر في نهاية الجلسة الأخيرة له على الدعوة التي قدمتها وكالة أذرتاك الأذربيجانية لعقد المؤتمر الدولي الخامس في باكو عام 2016. وأدعو صديق والعزيز مدير عام وكالة أنباء أذرتاج السيد نوف لإلقاء كلمة في هذه المناسبة.
نأمل من الإخوة المستمعين باللغة العربية للتحول إلى القناة الخامسة. القناة الخامسة للاستماع لحديث معالي رئيس وكالة أذرتاج.
Hörmətli xanımlar və cənablar, mən ilk öncə Səudiyyə Ərəbistanı Krallığı Milli Xəbər Agentliyinin baş direktoru, hörmətli qardaşım Abdullah bin Fəhd Əl-Hüseynə qonaqpərvərliyə, tədbirin gözəl təşkilinə görə təşəkkürümü və minnətdarlığımı bildirirəm. Bizim təklifimizi qəbul etdiyinizə, bu məsələdə Azərtayca dəstək verdiyinizə görə sizə təşəkkür edirəm. Sizin bu dəyəriniz Azərbaycanın artan nüfuzuna olan etibarınızın göstəricisidir. Mən bunu həm də Azərbaycan Milli Xəbər Agentliyinin işinə verdiyiniz yüksək qiymət və Azərtaycın 2016-cı ildə bu çox nüfuzlu beynəlxalq tədbirin uğurla təşkil edəcəyinizə inamınızın göstəricisi kimi qəbul edirəm. Sizə əmr edirəm ki, beynəlxalq səviyyəli müxtəlif tədbirlərə uğurla ev sahibliyi etmiş Azərbaycan, Azərtayc bu mötəbər tədbiri də yüksək səviyyədə təşkil edəcəkdir. Həyatda yaxşı dost tapmağın çətin olduğunu nəzərə alaraq, biz bugünkü qazancımıza görə çox sevinirik. İnanırıq ki, biz hamımız bu sevinci özümüzlə 2016-cı ildə Bakıya gətirəcək, daha da dərinləşdirəcək və qardaşlıq müstəvisinə keçirəcəyik. Əziz dostlarım, həmkarlarım, Asiya ilə Avropanın qovuşuğunda yerləşən Azərbaycanın paytaxtı Bakıda sizinlə görüşüb problemləri müzakirə etmək bizim üçün çox xoş olacaq. Hər birinizi 2016-cı ildə Bakıda səbirsizliklə gözləyirik. Sağ olun.